This morning is Nick Tulloch, the CEO of Mendell Helium. Nick, it's always good to be catching up. How are things?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Mark. How are you this morning?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Quite interested to read your news. So this is a little bit different. I know you had that Bitcoin Treasury policy originally where you were looking to take off some of the excess methane that you weren't going to use from your helium wells to effectively mine Bitcoin. But this is a bit different. This is actually reading to me like a real focused Bitcoin mining play. It's in Nebraska, so it's not Kansas. It's away from where you currently are. And as I understand, you're looking to drill a gas well for around $100,000 and literally use everything that comes off to mine Bitcoin. Have I got that right?
You've got it absolutely perfectly, and you are right in where you started. We've had a Bitcoin mining plan in operation since about March this year, and the original idea was, well, if we're producing helium, why don't we strip off the waste? The waste being hydrocarbons, and why don't we use the hydrocarbons for something, namely Bitcoin mining? Well, as our thinking's evolved, we've been presented with, and we've also looked at other ideas, and we found Nebraska ourselves, and what we've found is what we believe could be a very extensive biogenic methane field. And when I say extensive, this could be a field that could support many thousands of wells. I mean, we're drilling one. Jasper has been drilled this week, but if it does what we think it's going to do, it's going to be a very, I suppose, low volume, long term producer of a very high concentrated methane gas. So we think 94% methane based on historic readings from other tests, also to 950 BTU. And what that means is that we can connect the wellhead right up to a generator. That generator can power a Bitcoin mining server, and with no processing whatsoever, we could be in the Bitcoin mining business. And it's the processing which is the distinguishing part. So back in Kansas, yes, we can strip off the hydrocarbons, but there's a processing cost. And Bitcoin mining is all about getting cheap power. And we think what we have in Nebraska is very cheap power.
And it's only 100,000, so it's a cheap well to drill. It's not like the helium wells, which are, I think, about 500,000. This is only 100,000, and you should hit gas.
Do if it was 100,000, I'd be disappointed. I think we'll come in below that.
Okay.
I mean, 100,000 is our top end cost, including the cost of leasing the land, including the cost of drilling, add on a bit of contingency. So that's very much the upper end of the cost.
Okay.
This is a well that'll be less than 2,000 feet. It's drilled with air compression. There won't be a frac. It will flow under its own pressure. As I say, we're not looking for headline busting flow rates. We're looking for a steady flow rate of a high concentrate methane. That will be a success. So to put it in context, low double figure MCF per day. It'll be high fives all around at Mendell Helium. That's the volume we're looking for. But at under $100,000, that well is economic.
And once you've hit the gas, then is it effectively free gas from that point on?
Essentially, I mean, there's always a bit of sort of ongoing OPEX in terms of running a well. There'd certainly be ongoing OPEX in terms of running a Bitcoin mining process. But yes, this will be a very low cost source of gas.
Interesting. It's very interesting. I do want to just ask something on the reality of this, because I think long gone are the days when you could, like my friend at university, literally mine Bitcoin in the 2010s in your living room with a few old school GPUs, etc., running, and also using that to heat your freezing university apartment. It's all about scale these days, isn't it? And huge sort of data centers. So how does this sort of compete or fit into the modern day, today's day of mining Bitcoin?
Well, if we do your scale part first, if Jasper performs as we think it will perform, this is a field that could sustain several thousand wells. I mean, probably many thousand wells. So we're not looking at the Nebraska Panhandle, which is where we are, by the way. It's the sort of the part of Nebraska that sort of overhangs Colorado. We're not looking at that thinking, what will we do next? We're looking at that thinking, how many wells are we going to be able to put onto this site? So no issue on scale. But Bitcoin mining has evolved, and there are essentially one-stop shops that will provide the entire kit, the generator, the server, the cooler, probably all presented to you in a shipping container, which can be sized according to your power requirements. So, where we are in Nebraska, we would probably be fortunate if one well was sufficient to run the scale of Bitcoin mining that we want. But because the wells will be so closely spaced, it's quite a straightforward job to connect 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 wells together to run one Bitcoin mining facility. So yeah, as far as scale goes, I guess if you sort of peer into the future of Mendell Helium, you could imagine a field with many, many gas wells with a periodic shipping container between them, housing the Bitcoin mining facility.
Excellent. And how could the shipping containers work then? Would you look to acquire them yourself, or are there partners you could use to kind of let them handle the tech side while you handle the mining side?
Well, there's broadly 3 choices. We could buy the equipment, and there are people who sell the equipment either as a one-stop shop or as piecemeal. We could lease the equipment, so same capital items on the field, but now we lease them rather than own them. Or we could joint venture with someone where they provide the Bitcoin mining equipment, we provide the gas, we provide the production and the geology. Best return for us would be if we buy the equipment. That's always got the biggest capital cost up front. Lowest return for us is probably if we rent the equipment, no capital cost, but then we're paying essentially a premium lease arrangement, and then somewhere in the middle is the joint venture. I think it's important to know your strengths. We are geologists, we're explorers, we're producers. We have one member of the team who has done Bitcoin mining before, so we're not novices, but this would be a new experience for us. So I suspect the outcome for Mendell Helium is either we buy the equipment, but we hire a facilities management firm to manage the equipment for us, or we JV with someone who, by definition, would then manage the facility on our behalf. I don't think we're just going to buy a shipping container, plug it in, and hope for the best. Our style is work with experts, work with people who know what they're doing, and make sure we get the best outcome. So let's get Jasper online first, then let's get all of Jasper's offsets online as well. Demonstrate we've got that level of gas. But already we've been approached by people, and we've certainly been approached by people who want to sell us things and lease us things. But maybe more interestingly, we've been approached by people who want to JV with us. So there's already appetite in the market. Okay.
When would you be looking to get that drilling going at Jasper?
It's going to happen this week.
Right.
We've got the team on site. This is a shallow well drilled with air compression. This is going to happen in a matter of days. So we will get the results very quickly.
And you said in the RNS, I think it was about an estimated 950 BTU. So I wonder if you can first just explain that, and also is that what you'll be looking for when you're drilling in the next few days?
Yeah, the higher the BTU, the higher the energy content, the more efficient the gas will be. This is what we've always liked about Nebraska since we first started looking at it. As I say, the gas that comes out of the comes out of the wellhead, if it's anything like the historic tests, can go straight into the generator. No need for processing. If it's 950 BTU, it's going to be an efficient gas to power the generator. In other words, we will get more power per cubic foot of gas that we put into the generator. If you fall, again, I'm not an expert, but if you fall into, say, the 700s of BTU, you're probably not going to get enough efficiency. And given Bitcoin mining is all about getting cheap electricity to run the server, run the coolers, it's important you've got a very efficient generator, therefore being powered by an efficient gas mix. So the 2 numbers in the announcement, 94% methane, 950 BTU, that's telling us we've got a very good quality gas that can be fed straight into the generator. So if that's what we're coming out with, then we're very happy. And I suppose just to re-emphasize, this is a biogenic methane source. So think sort of landfill gas. It's shallow. If you look at other biogenic fields, we're way too early in Nebraska to start sort of estimating what the scale of the field is. But look at places like South Alberta in Canada. You've got vast fields that are run for decades. This could be, if it is what we think it is, a very, very long life field producing very steady amounts of methane.
Okay, so that 94 purity, that suggests then that you shouldn't need processing. It can almost be ran as it is. In terms of what's there, is it too early? Have you run any numbers yet on sort of how many miners you could run, hash rates, all that kind of thing? Or I'm getting into details now. You're not even drilled the well, but I'm just wondering if you've thought about that.
Yeah, we absolutely have, and I suppose the biggest variable for us is I suppose the 2 variables are what is the size of the Bitcoin server we're putting on site. In other words, what power requirements is it going to have, and how many wells do we need to connect to satisfy those power requirements? Is it 2? Is it 4? It's going to be that in that sort of level, and that will depend on what the flow rates are. But again, we're not looking for a massive flow rate. In some ways, we're probably more interested in the quality of the gas and the longevity of the well. Whereas say Rost, down in Kansas, that's a very high pressure, sensational flow rate. Jasper is not that at all. Jasper is, if it's slow and steady, we'll be absolutely over the moon.
Okay, good. Well, just finally on this point before we just get a catch up on Rost. So, is it fair to say that this side of the business would be a bit of a sort of side gig or a nice sort of side hustle for Mendell Helium? And where do you think it fits in this whole Bitcoin Treasury thing that's going on at the moment, which was a bit of a craze for 2 weeks and has potentially died off here, but we are seeing a lot of mining companies getting involved. So I'm quite keen to get your thoughts on why you're continuing to pursue this, what future you see, and how this fits into the overall strategy, if it's a side gig or if it's a bit more than that.
I mean, it's an integrated gig. We've said for some time, we're interested in Bitcoin mining. So initially that was about stripping off the hydrocarbons from what we have in Kansas. We're also interested in building up a Bitcoin Treasury, which we expect to do through two things. One is by investing the proceeds of helium sales, which we expect to start quite soon in volume. And the second is through Bitcoin mining itself. So we see the strategy as quite integrated. What we have in Nebraska is out and out Bitcoin mining. We do not expect any helium or any note to come out of the ground in Nebraska. Yes, this is very much a methane and therefore Bitcoin mining play. But we do see it as integrated. And on your second part of the question, I'm going to use an analogy a broker gave me not so long ago, which is, and he obviously watches a bit of Netflix. So his analogy was, season 1 it was all about Bitcoin Treasury. Raise a pound, use the pound to buy Bitcoin. Share price goes up 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. Isn't that wonderful? But the markets began to tire of that strategy, and so season 2 is slightly different. Season 2 is Bitcoin mining. Raise the pound, use the pound to invest in Bitcoin mining, and then produce many, many Bitcoin over an extended period. And we're also seeing a few other offshoots. I mean, there's some quite creative strategies going on in the market.
Yeah.
So we are a subscriber to the benefits of Bitcoin long term. But I think I like the season 2 analogy that the broker gave me better, which is our strategy is not just about buying Bitcoin. We will do that with our helium production, but our strategy is about developing a Bitcoin mining business within Mendell Helium. And that could be partly in Kansas through essentially waste gas, but maybe Nebraska could be where it's really at. Because if this field is what we think it can be, then if we talk in 2 or 3 years and there's not one Jasper, but there's now 1,000 Jaspers, we've got quite an interesting prospect in terms of being a very serious Bitcoin miner in our own right.
Interesting. Well, like you say, you're certainly not the only, and hopefully certainly not the last mining company to sort of mix digital assets with real commodities. It's quite an exciting time to be a mining investor in this sort of new territory, if you like. But let's just talk about Rost. Of course, that is your big one. That's what you're about to drill,
yes.
Or about to start pumping from. There was equipment arriving on site. Where are you with actually getting that going?
Yeah, it's good. It's taken a bit longer than we expected. I mean, I suppose just to explain what happens, we have a disposal well called Broby. That is permitted, it works, it's ready to receive water. We have a production well called Rost. That is ready to go. The ESP, the pump, is installed in the well. So both wells are ready in their own right. They need to be connected. You don't just, I suppose you can just connect the two with a hose, but you then run the risk of, what if there's a blockage in Broby and the water doesn't go into the disposal well, it goes all over the field. So just as you do in your plumbing in your own home, you put a buffer in the way, and our buffer is 4 tanks, and each tank is a little under 500 barrels worth of capacity. And then the tanks are connected to each other, and they're connected to the respective wells. And then you put a pump in place as well. So if gravity isn't enough to get the water into Broby, you have a pump to give it a hand as well. None of this is very complicated. It's all been done before. It just took a little bit longer, particularly getting the tanks. If you imagine what a 500 barrel tank looks like, this is not something that DPD are going to deliver on the back of a van. This is a wide load that needs to travel from where it's put together to our site, and it just took slightly longer than we expected. None of that sets a problem, and there's a silver lining actually. This part of the job in terms of connecting Ross to Broby has come quite significantly under budget. Five figures, medium five figures under budget. So we're actually pretty pleased with how it's all been put together. Took a couple of weeks longer, but we're still on track to do everything we said we were going to do, and we expect to turn things on in early September.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to talking to you when you do turn that on, and of course catching up on drilling of the gas there for mining, Bitcoin mining.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be sort of watching this space fairly carefully, and we'll get results pretty quickly, we think.
Yeah, good. Well, Nick Tulloch, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Mark.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.